Plugging people's minds into a computer, brain chips are no longer science fiction and can theoretically be used to treat several medical conditions. So can brain-computer interfaces really transform people's lives? And what could be the downside? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Dareen Abughaida. Imagine being able to control your smartphone with your mind or being able to type using your thoughts instead of your thumbs. Well, Tesla CEO Elon Musk says that could soon become a reality, particularly for people with paralysis. His brain chip startup Neuralink has just enabled a monkey to play a video game by thinking. They did it by embedding two chips on each side of the animal's brain to record his mind activity. And as part of the experiment, the macaque was trained to move a joystick. Data sent to the computer was then used to allow the monkey to control the stick just by thinking about moving its hand up or down. Well, Neuralink uses a technology called BCI, or brain-computer interface. It reads brain activity and can also communicate information back to the brain. It's been around for a while, but Neuralink's big advance is making it wireless rather than a direct connection. Now, Neuralink says its first commercial product will allow people with paralysis to use smartphones. It could also be used to help cure brain conditions like Alzheimer's disease. And the company's boss, Elon Musk, believes that it could one day allow telepathic communication without the need for spoken words. So a lot to discuss with our guests. Let's bring them in. Joining us from Utrecht is Nick Ramsey, who's a professor in cognitive neuroscience at the University of Utrecht. And in Maastricht, Ruta Liepiņa, who's an assistant professor in digital legal studies at Maastricht University. Thanks for joining us. Welcome to the program. Nick, I'll start with you. How significant is this latest reveal from Neuralink?
It's very interesting from an engineering point of view. I think they made an amazing tiny device that does a lot more than current devices can, but the rest of the story is basically showing that they can do what we've been able to do for 20 years. So it's, the monkey being able to play a game is not a big surprise. We have 20, 30 people implanted with devices that can do a lot better than that. But, I think what he shows is that at least their device works.
Right. And what seems to be new as well is that it is wireless. So does that change where technology is headed, and is that a big deal in your opinion?
No, we have wireless devices for the last 7, 8 years. The big difference is that the number of electrodes, the number of sensors that it can serve is a lot higher, and really a lot higher. The best we have fully implanted now is about 64 electrodes, sensors, and I think he has over 1,000 or 2,000 in the tiny package. That's really amazing. It's an engineering feat.
Ruta, I wonder if you can weigh in on the technological advancements and how you would rate it?
Yeah, so my background is more from the legal and technology side.
Right, which in fact we're going to get into a little bit later. But then just give me your reaction to what you've seen come out of this video.
Yeah, I mean, it is fascinating to see how far we've become, but I agree with Nick that some of these advancements we already saw in research papers. So from engineering perspective, it's wonderful to see that we can do it right now.
So is it more of a hype then, in your opinion, Ruta?
I mean, we do have to take into account also the hype that comes with discussing technological advancements and Elon Musk also on social media. So there's a bit hype around it, but it is an advancement as well.
Nick, you are working with two patients yourself, from what I understand, currently using brain-computer interface. Tell us about the aim there and what you're hoping to achieve.
So the field has been implanting people for almost 20 years, and we implanted our first patient 5.5 years ago. She's ALS. She has ALS. She's locked in. It means that she can barely communicate. She can still move her eyes a little bit, but not that much. And we decided to go for an implant that's fully implantable and that works at home. And mind you, many scientists before us have shown that You can decode brain signals, you can interpret brain signals, you can figure out roughly what someone wants to do. But we decided to make it a little simpler, have a fully implanted device that no wire sticking out, that would work at home. And that's a really big difference from the lab. Most of the systems that are more advanced, they work in a lab, but you have a team of scientists and big external computers to make it work, which is not feasible for at home. And we have a system that works 24 hours a day. The only disadvantage is it's only a click. So the patients can, or the users can basically make mouse clicks, and then they can use software that's commercially available for people with disabilities, or people that are have an uncontrollable movement, and they use a switch or a chin switch. And so what we proved is that it really works at home, that you can decode the signal reliably enough, because what you can do in a lab, showing that you can, make an arm move and everything, doesn't mean it works at home, because people are distracted all the time. And there's some indication that if in the lab, you can move an arm, if you're at home and you're distracted, that the arm is going to go all over the place, because your brain does more than just control the arm. But in the lab, you're completely focused on moving your arm and nothing else. Well, when you're at home, there's a lot of different things going on. So it's an additional challenge. And what
are some of the challenges that have come with this?
There's a couple. One is the reliability. It's very difficult to have the system respond to the brain only when the person wants to. Quite often, the computer responds well. The patient doesn't want to do anything. That's very irritating. Another big challenge is to get more sophisticated information. So where we really want to go is to decode attempted speech. It sounds a little awkward, but when people are completely paralyzed, they can't move their facial muscles, they can't talk. What we think we can do is, if we have 100 or maybe 1,000 sensors, we only have 4 now in our patients, we might be able to have a computer say what the user of the BCI is trying to say. So we basically pick up the signals from the brain that you generate trying to speak, but those signals don't reach the muscles, so there's no movement. But those electrical signals are there in the brain, and we should be able to see them. And that's for the next, I think, 10, 20 years, we're going to be really working hard on trying to figure out how to decode what a person is trying to say.
Ruta,
and that's going to be a huge challenge.
Okay, Ruta, one of the, apologies, Nick. Ruta, one of the statements that Elon Musk has made is that he said the initial goal of projects such as these is to enable people with quadriplegia to control a computer or smartphone using just their thoughts. But then he also did go on to say that he seeks to enable humans to merge with artificial intelligence, giving people superhuman intelligence. So do you think this type of technology is intended for medical treatment, or will we see it evolve into human enhancement?
Yeah, that is a very interesting question, also an interesting path for development, because at the moment, even with the experiments with the pigs and monkeys, what the application says is that it's focused with helping people with the central, the central diseases. At the same time, it is worrying to think about what if this technology becomes commercially available? So what if we could enhance certain reasoning skills, and who it will be made available to? So is it available for everyone? Is it available for the highest bidder? And these questions really create more inequality considerations and also ethical concerns.
Yeah, we'll get into the ethical concerns as well. But Nick, do you agree with that assessment? And also the assessment from the Royal Society, which is a group in the UK's National Science Academy, in fact, which says that BCI could be on the verge of explosive growth.
I think at first it will be for medical purposes, and now it's for people that are locked in. And in years to come, it will be for people who have had a brain stroke, like a bleeding in the brain, and they can't talk very well. And I think this will be really interesting to make their lives more dignified. For people who don't need one, I think it's a very high hurdle to get, because you are getting someone to tinker with your brain. You do need a surgeon to put it in there, no matter how small it is. And, in my experience, people are very hesitant. Even people that are paralyzed, they are very hesitant to have anyone tinker with their brain, because that's the most important thing in your body. You could suffer a lot of other ailments, but your brain, if something goes wrong, or memory or confusion, everybody fears that the most. So I think it will be quite a challenge, and it will have to show that it really brings something extra, and that's going to take decades. I mean, it is a engineering feat, but there's no way that a Neuralink is going to suddenly reveal how the brain works, while millions of scientists have been trying to figure it out for many decades. They will hit the same limit, that we just don't know enough about the brain to be able to make it work the way that Elon thinks it should work. I admire his idea, but I see, hurdles way beyond, a lot of hurdles beyond the technical challenges. And again, it's an amazing feat to put like thousands of amplifiers in a tiny little disc. It's stunning.
Medically speaking,
it's not the biggest problem.
Right. So medically speaking, what are the risks? Because obviously, as you're saying, safety is a top priority always.
The device needs to be waterproof, because the brain fluid will be in contact with the device. It's encapsulated in titanium, whatever. But if the liquid leaks in, it can also transport chemicals out. And we don't know what micro quantities of electronic chemicals do to the brain. It might kill you in 20 years' time. Those are really high standards that we adhere to. And there's a lot of developments as in Neuralink, much less sophisticated, but they never reach people because they don't meet the standards. The second thing is the sensors. It's, again, amazing technology. They're hairs that are put in there with a big, sewing machine that they built. But we don't know how long they stay intact. What if they deteriorate? How long, is it worth an implant if they only last 5 years, because then the brain liquids have eaten it up? Of course, that's what the brain liquids do. They eat up stuff that's alien to the brain. What comes out of those electronics, the electrodes, what is going to leak into the brain? Are they going to break? Those are all things that we need to worry about, not for the short term, but you really don't want to risk someone having severe problems 10 years after you implanted it, because these things are not easy to take out.
Ruta, on the issue of human enhancement, I mean, there is an estimate that says the expected market value of this industry is at $1.72 billion, and that's by 2022. So for a lot of companies that may be interested in this, there is a huge potential. Is that something that worries you? And what sort of privacy and security issues would this raise?
Yeah, so the investments really, they follow the technological developments. So I'm not really surprised to hear that there's so much interest in this technology, but a lot of worries come with that. So I think the two areas in law that would be most affected is criminal law, if we think about responsibility and human capabilities of controlling their mind and actions. So what if you now have this intermediary of machine that could alter some of these states? And then the other thing that you mentioned about the privacy and data protection. So these devices gather data directly from your brain. And at the moment, there's a lot of discussion about data protection online, on internet, on certain apps on your phone that you have quite a lot of control over. Whereas when it comes to our brains and mind, we really don't know enough, and we can't control enough what information is given away and how is it used afterwards. So what purposes are used for that?
What sort of regulation is there around this issue, if any at all?
So I would say at the moment there is a regulatory gap when it comes to implanted devices in brain development. There is protection when it comes to product liability and medical devices as such, but at the moment we don't really have enough specific regulation that would focus on AI that is implanted in humans. So there is a gap there. And when it comes to data protection, again, the GDPR that is ruling privacy concerns and data protection in Europe, it doesn't specifically address these kind of questions.
Why do you think that is? Why is there a lack of regulation?
Yeah, well, I think it's notoriously said that regulation always lags behind development and technology. And at the moment, there is progress in developing laws about AI protection and liability. At the same time, AI includes so many different aspects that it really goes into almost all areas of law. And it's such a huge task that it's just going to take us much longer.
Nick, as someone who works in BCI, do you think that it needs regulation?
I think what was said is correct. We don't really know, and why it's not there is because the implants are just not common yet. I think an additional part is responsibility issues. So we do get into the area of robotics and automated vehicles, but a brain implant, it interprets a wish. And what if the wish is, whose is it? Is it, let's say you have a wheelchair and you control the wheelchair with your BCI and you hit someone and you hurt someone. Who is responsible? Is that the wheelchair, the technology, because clearly they didn't quite interpret you correctly, or is it the user because he didn't give the right instruction? These are very complicated fields where human behavior gets entangled in intelligent machinery, and the who's responsible is one issue that we have to deal with. For instance, our users, our patients, we do not allow them to control mechanical devices because it's just too risky, even if we trusted the system quite well, but it's still too risky. And I think that's going to be more and more complicated, and it's going to be quite a challenge to get that handled legally. But I think a lot of the things that go for AI and for robotics, they apply to BCI. I'm not sure you need a separate kind of legal domain for this.
Ruta, what about the risk of, you touched upon this just a moment ago, but the risk of people's brains being hacked? Is that realistic? Yeah,
well, I'm not entirely sure how realistic that is linked specifically to the implants, but there have been a lot of data breaches in the last few years where a lot of personal information has been leaked. So if personal sensitive information such as your address or name is leaked, it is really difficult to replace that. And at the moment, we don't really have enough scenarios. What if some of your brain states, what if some of your thoughts are leaked? Because that is very sensitive data. And from legal point, we really want to protect that.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, will brain data, can it actually be bought and sold like people's information is now online?
Yeah, I don't really have an answer to that question, but it is worrying, and it's something we should consider before this technology is made available.
Okay, Nick, how do we prepare for this future of BCIs?
I don't think we should prepare. I think there's a lot of work that's ahead of us. With the better technology, I really hope we get the Neuralink device available, provided it's safe. I don't know yet. But once we're there, and once we know how much we can extract from the brain, that's a step where we can think about what the consequences are. And for instance, people think that those devices can read the mind or thoughts or emotions. There's no indication whatsoever that we're going to be near good enough anywhere in the next decades, because the simple thing is the brain has 100 billion little cells that all do their own thing and together. To be able to make sense out of what's happening in the brain, it's very distributed what's happening. you need, hundreds of millions of sensors, and I don't know how we're going to put those in the brain.
There are reports,
they need space.
however, that Facebook itself is developing a BCI implant that does read brain activity. I wonder if you know anything about that.
I don't know that they do brain implants. They're really geared towards non-invasive, like helmets or things like that. I don't see how they can do anything more surprising than what Elon is doing. I think he's ahead of the field in terms of the number of electrodes, the number of sensors. But he says sensors, there's 3,000, and they're in like a few square millimeters of the brain, and the brain is a lot larger than that. So I don't see any technology, implant or non-implant, that's going to get anywhere close to what we need to start thinking about, reading minds and everything, which I think for me and my colleagues is not a target. There's no reason for this. So the only thing that we can read out from the brain is the part of the brain that's used to control your muscles.
Right.
Pretty much anything else in the brain is extremely difficult to interpret.
Ruta, a moment ago, you were mentioning that this can lead to unequal and sort of divided societies if this type of technology is only accessible to some. I wonder if you can just flesh out that argument for us.
Yeah, so here I was thinking more about really long-term development of this technology, because some of the claims that Elon is making, that he would want to access some of these thoughts, maybe record some of the memories that we have, or possibly enhance the reasoning of some human beings. So I believe that if such technology is only available to people who can pay for it, that could further just develop the inequalities that are already in the society. So that could be a huge problem.
And I know that both of you are speaking to us from the Netherlands, but over in the US, any sort of human trials needs to get FDA approval. Ruta, would this industry face significant hurdles, do you think, when it comes to getting regulatory approval from the FDA?
So that really depends also, because I feel the FDA is taking this innovative approach. So they have given permissions for the experiments on the pig and the monkeys, but it will take years because we also have to think about long-term impacts of this technology. So there will be hurdles, but I don't see that it would be impossible that they would get approval for this.
So do you agree with Elon Musk when he said that Neuralink would start human trials by the end of 2020, which is this year? Is that a significant target, Ruta?
I do think that is too optimistic, but then again, we don't know the full story of what's happening behind the scenes, but 2020 is very early.
Nick, do you see the human trial starting by the end of this year or this year?
I think it's possible. It's all you need to prove to the FDA is that it's, there's no harm done to animals for at least 6 months or something like that. The FDA is much more inclined to help these studies. They call them safety and efficacy tests. They are doable. In Europe, it's extremely difficult to do that because there is no FDA in Europe. It's all delegated to the governments of Europe with some European rules. We're not going to have that many developments in Europe. They're all going to be in the US because they have a special program that expedites the development of human brain implants and technology. There will be some casualties, some people that get harmed, but that's what the FDA gives permission for, to say, well, test your device in a human after you've shown it's safe in animals. And then from there you go further. Those studies typically last maybe 6 months, maybe a year or so, and then it's supposed to be explanted. Yeah, I think it's possible. If it's, to get approval with the FDA is if you have a lot of funds and you can test in animals real quick, you don't have to change the device based on that, because then you have to go back to the animals and test it again. If the paperwork is right, you have enough people to write the paperwork, then yeah, end of this year should be feasible.
Okay, thank you so much. We'll leave it there. Nick Ramsey, thanks for joining us. Liepiņa, thank you so much. And thank you for watching. You can always see the program again anytime by visiting our website, aljazeera.com. For further discussion, you can go to our Facebook page. That's facebook.com/AJ Inside Story. You can also join the conversation on Twitter. Our handle is @AJ Inside Story. From myself and the whole team, thanks for watching. Bye-bye for now.